President Biden finally forced to condemn the insanity on college campuses as riot cops put an end to the anarchy at UCLA, smashing through their plywood Gaza encampment wall, removing pallets and metal barriers as they fought pro-terrorist protesters for 3 hours. The battle was intense. Officers using tear gas, flares, and flashbangs after being attacked by these radicals. And then they started making arrests, unmasking and perp-walking these Hamas-loving students one by one, eventually clearing the encampment. The agitators weren't just spewing garbage, they left it behind, too. The cleared-out campus was a landfill of anti-Semitic hatred. The school had to literally bring in bulldozers to clean it all up. And after waiting weeks, President Biden finally showing his sorry face to make formal remarks and timidly speaking out against the anarchy.
There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America.
Mr. President, have the protests forced you to reconsider any of the policies with regard to the region?
No.
But compare those words to what Donald Trump is saying.
They did a really good job at UCLA. It was very much embedded. And just so you understand, this is the radical left. This is a movement from the left, not from the right. The right is not your problem, despite what law enforcement likes to say. The FBI director said that he worries about the right. These are radical left lunatics. And they got to be stopped now because it's going to go on, and it's going to get worse and worse. And, you know, they take over countries, okay? And we're not letting them take over the USA. We're not letting the radical left morons take over this country.
All right, Jesse, I'll start with you. You know, it's very interesting. When Biden was finally made a decision to speak, he talked about there's no place for anti-Semitism and there's no place for Islamophobia. I mean, is he tone deaf? Has he been listening to the fact that this is all about intifada and killing the Jews? I mean, is it too little, too late?
Yeah, I mean, it took him 10 days to tell us that bigotry's bad. Okay. And then he said, Republicans don't pounce. And then he bounced. Downright Churchillian, if you asked me, Judge, up there with his strong statement, don't. You remember, nobody listens to this guy. And then Trump comes in and constantly beats him to the punch. He's always early and more descriptive, whether it's Lake and Riley or East Palestine or here. He gets in and he makes like 7 great points about the protest and about what should be done about it, while Biden's just heads in the clouds. Now, I get that you want to protest and fight the power in college. That is fine. But I don't think they're really knowing what they're protesting. They're really protesting America, but they don't know how good they have it. Right now, they've never suffered in their entire lives. So
right, let me just interrupt for a second. President Trump has arrived at the fire department, the firehouse. He's handing out pizzas right now. We expect to hear from him in a few minutes, but finish your thought.
I was just going to say these kids have never really suffered. So their idea of suffering is like a camping trip. And now they want catering. And they're asking for a side of riot gear. And it's like when you pitch a tent in your backyard and Mom, I'll have heat me up some vegan plates. You know, Jimmy's coming over. It's silly. And it's not going to do anything to Joe Biden. Biden's not going to say, oh, Bibi, they're angry at Columbia. Do something. Bibi's not listening to Joe Biden. Bibi got the money from Congress. He's probably going to Rafah and clean up Hamas. And Hamas isn't even agreeing to any of the ceasefire demands. Israel's bending over backwards to do a ceasefire. Hamas says, no, come get us. nothing's going to change.
You know, what's interesting, Harold, is that the students in these universities are, that they want all this ridiculous stuff. They want knee pads, elbow pads, vegan food. I mean, but they want to know all about the financial investments of these universities. We want to be able to look at your books and find out what your university is supporting. And then we find out that almost half of these agitators aren't even students in the campus.
Good to be back with everybody, and it's been unfortunate watching a lot what's happened over the last week and a half, but to watch, to Greg's point and to Jesse's point, the police and law enforcement, even what President Trump shared at the outset going into trial, I agree with part of it. I like the fact and have been a supporter of police and law enforcement confronting and holding people accountable who are not exercising their First Amendment rights legally. Two, I've said before, we have a history of protests in our country. And the most successful, the most persuasive, the most powerful protest has always been peaceful. And it's always been with an end in mind and without, or I should say, an absence of violence towards those who may be opposed to you, or for that matter, seeking violence or preaching hatred towards those people. And in this instance here, we're talking about what people are doing to Jewish Americans and the Jewish people and how they're talking about the Jewish state. So again, I'm happy that people have been arrested. Now, one of the things I think we should focus on, Judge, and I know you focus on a lot because it's your life's work and mission, is accountability in life. And I think for many, we've gotten to a point where people don't think they should be held accountable for their actions. For when I listened to that young lady come out of Colombia and ask for food, she said humanitarian aid. Now, if you choose to go to a school, to your last point, or a place where they're investing in things that you don't like, then you shouldn't invest in it, nor should you go there. You should just withdraw. Now, I think Mayor Adams had it right. There are people who are outside of these schools who are agitating, who are there, who are making problems. But we should understand, and we should teach kids that, and people in life, that you can't violate the law and then hide behind the First Amendment or hide behind fancy words. And finally, one of the things I have yet to understand around these people that are protesting, what is it that you think that you achieve in the long run if you are not out talking about peace and talking about change and talking about bringing things to people's lives that they don't have? And what you're doing now is just completely against that. And I'm glad to hear President Trump and President Biden speaking the way they are.
Well, finally, President Biden decided to speak. What do you think pushed the president, Dana? Was it that Axios article?
I mean, it could be. I mean, the media was certainly going, "Why are you being so silent, sir?" And I think I think the window closed, right? He had an opportunity to say something. I think he said too little, too late. It was a feeble response, like, fine, okay, you're against the protest. But the thing is, they're not even protesting against Hamas and Israel so much anymore.
Yeah.
At the University of Chicago today, they demanded that the Green New Deal be passed, okay? And that is preposterous. His response was feeble. And you're looking at President Trump now. He spent the entire day in court. And now he's out and about meeting with people who want to be there. Remember the Wawa, the silent Wawa? And the president can't even take questions from the press on this. And he can't find the outrage to say, wait a minute, I am hearing that students at Northwestern University, for example, I know it happened at UCLA as well. This happened to my friend's son. She sent me this note, that basically the activists were self-appointed and they were telling you, if you were Jewish, you could not go in this location.
Right.
That does not get the president mad. He doesn't want to actually do something. Now, then I hear that yesterday he did have a meeting of his anti-Semitic council, or anti-Semitism council, but they didn't tell anybody about it. Why? What are you waiting for? And the last thing I'd point out is the students, yes, they are, of course, an audience of his, but so are parents, taxpayers, faculty, senior citizens, Holocaust survivors. There's a lot of different people that you have to think about in all of this when you're the leader of the free world. Also, I'm sorry, I do have one last thing. They don't know how to camp. When you camp, you leave no trace. These guys left an entire mess for everybody else to clean up. They should have had to clean it up.
You know, Greg, the university in Iran has offered scholarships to these American protesters. Shouldn't they take advantage of that generous offer
Yes.
to live under the regime that supports and directs Hamas?
I think so. I think they might actually find a major that fits their mentality. They could enroll in Kill the Jews 101 with a minor in public executions. And in phys ed, they could do, I don't know, jihadist jumping jacks. Just going back to what Biden said, remember, he based his entire campaign in 2020 on the Fine People hoax. He lied and said that President Trump had claimed that there were fine people on both sides when talking about white supremacists and rioters, when he was in fact talking about the debate over statues. Now we have a real Fine People hoax. Joe Biden came out and said, you know, we have to condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. There's no Islamophobia present.
That's right.
There isn't that there. He cannot even isolate. Like, it's pretty clear that Jews will always be treated differently, negatively. How can this be? Like, why can't you just say this is anti-Semitism and it's wrong instead of placing it into the context of something else? Now, when you look at the protests, there's two things you got to notice. Especially the videos we were saying, mostly young women. And a lot of people aren't talking about that, and I don't know why. But they look miserable, disheveled. Meanwhile, when you see those counter-protesters, those frat boys, healthy, good-looking guys, they got it together. These women are a mess. There's something going on in our culture where leftism has led young women down a path where their only purpose they perceive is outrage. And you see this in every issue, whether it's trans, supporting Hamas, BLM. They've devoted their aimless energy into causes that serve to only undermine their future, their happiness. And we've derided motherhood to a point where their only baby is abortion. That's the thing they want to protect. And you look at this and you go, okay, there's two parts to this. You got the people who are leading the protests. They're the lead singers. The students are just the chorus. You pull out the lead singers, there's no chorus. So who are the lead singers? They're trained professional instigators. Who's behind this? Our intel agents probably know that. Why aren't they saying anything? How come Alex Soros hasn't come out and said, look, I have nothing to do with this. I'm not supporting this, but there's a growing assumption that his money is going into these groups, Democrat-sponsored groups, to do this. Why is he remaining silent on this? Why aren't the actual journalists in media going after this and trying to find out? They spent so much time. We need to ferret out the white supremacists in the military. We're going to do a whole research project on it. They found nothing. Yep. And yet they can't tell us who's behind this. A widespread anti-Semitic phenomenon, and you're not the least bit interested in who's behind it, but you're interested that maybe a white guy had a Confederate flag on his bunk in the military?
Yep.
Well said.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm interested in both, I might add. But
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.